Hello everybody, I am your MC Naomi. This is Summer Helicon West. As you know, summer is all open mic Helicon, so you in this room are the featured readers. There's plenty of room on the sign-up sheet. Well, there's 3 days. I don't know how big it is. I don't know if there's another side. Anyway, there's room, so you can probably sign up later if you change your mind and decide to sign up. Okay, I'm gonna do the thing now. Okay. Helicon West is an uncensored public reading series. We regularly host published authors alongside community writers to promote and support all levels of skill, ability, and craft. If you'd like to read during the open mic, sign up on the sign-up sheet. It was in the back. It'll be with me. So just, yeah, you know what it is. Okay. If you would like to donate to keep Helicon West going, we have bookmarks on the coffee table with a QR code link. We acknowledge that Helicon West operates on the territory of the Northwestern Band of the Shoshone Nation. Our events are made possible with the support from Sugar House Review, the Logan Library, with special thanks to Joseph.
Logan Library!
You clap for that. You clap for Sugar House Review. They're awesome. The USU English Department and community volunteers. For a full land acknowledgement statement, interviews with featured readers, merch, and more, visit heliconwest.wordpress.com. And if you get coffee, make sure it has a lid. And also, if you're a coffee drinker, consider bringing your own reusable cup, which would lessen the chance of spills and be, more environmentally kind. So think about that. Okay, we are going to begin. Featured readers are, okay. Oh, wait, one more thing. If you do not want to be recorded, that's okay. Just give Joseph some kind of signal or verbally say, no, bro, not into it. Whatever, and he'll stop the recording because we're cool like that. But otherwise, you'll be recorded and it'll be on YouTube and people will watch it on their TVs, which is awesome. So, okay, here we go. I will read the readers 3 at a time and then you come up and do your thing. We'll continue until it's over. Okay, so our first 3 readers are Isaac Tim, Ronald Jensen, and Will Wood.
All right.
I haven't been here in a while. Can you hear me? Yeah. Good? Cool beans. All right. This first poem is The Longing. The Longing. I never wanted to be a misery ghost, the single witness to all your tragedy. I wanted to be the sun, the warmth of memory on your face. I remembered your smile, the slight raise of your lip, your green eyes glistening with all your happiness. I just wanted to be the reason for that smile. I never wanted to own it, to capture your smile like a bird. I just, for a moment, wanted to be the reason you flew. And this poem is called, okay. This poem is called Joey Heatherton Dancing for the USO Mekong Delta in 1969. Joey Heatherton was a go-go dancer, famous in the 60s, as a sex symbol. All right, this is Joey Heatherton dancing for the USO show Mekong Delta in 1969. In my father's photo album, Joey Heatherton is a ghost of movement in sequins. One muscled dancer hip forward, her hair feathered like a bird, snake scales, an Egyptian goddess, her eyes, her lips diamonds. She moves in a sea of green. Young soldiers of the 9th Cavalry. Everything in Vietnam is Kodachrome green. Blades of choppers, tents, and palm trees haunting the background. She dances in frame after frame, her short skirt fluttering out. She is a sexual sphinx, her lipstick pink glitter, her stage makeup thick as a death mask. Under her long lashes she is coy, professionally cold, like any goddess. Then she is looking down at my father, startled. Eyes large, lips parted, mid-intake of breath. My father's flash right at her feet, a smudge of footlight in the corner. Then she is in retreat, her muscular calf raised in a back kick, her skirt flared up a peak at her ass, well worth the night in the brig. Prop your device. It's all fancy. It's all digital.
Hi, everyone.
I enjoyed being here, but for the 2 years, until I got married, came out here. He was great for us. He didn't understand. He was good and savvy the way that I am. Now I love his husband and father too. So my heartache for all of you. Hope can come it, and big to come. While you're missing, thank you love them. And we've got letters in mine. Mama, I missed you since you've been gone. But it's happened with me since you passed on. I met a woman, his name's Kaylee. Said the love of my life, if you know what I mean. First you got married, then we got sealed. Sometimes it's hard to believe it's all real. But before I went, to be my wife, and we're all together, killing this life. So keep.
My name's Will Wood. This is my first time here. That made me feel a little better. So we have like 7 minutes? Okay, I read that somewhere. All right, I'm gonna read one thing first and then maybe another thing. So I started really writing maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and it's been a great thing. It's kind of like seeing my thoughts on paper is like, wow, I didn't know my blood was that color. It's so interesting. And this was this little book that I'm going to read is it was like a project. It took me like 2 years to do it, but it was spawned from my mom passing away, and I was just trying to like reconcile the feelings, and like I really wanted to explain how I felt, and I was like, if I can explain it, then I'll feel better. And that didn't work, but it was still nice to explain it. So I'm gonna hold up the pictures because I had a pro do the illustrations, and so that's half the fun of the book. So sorry if you can't see it. So this is called "And It Was Beautiful." Should I hold this up? Is this okay? Like story time?
Yeah.
All right. In the woods stood a mountain. On the mountain there were rocks and birds and trees and bees and dirt, and it was beautiful. In the summer it was hot. In the winter it was cold. Over time 2 trees grew, and they made shade, and flowers grew, and bees would buzz. Together the trees grew taller and stronger, and birds would sing and nest in their branches, and it was beautiful. As the tall trees grew, pine cones fell, and smaller trees began to grow. The tall tall trees taught the young trees, sink your roots deep and drink the water. Send your branches high and feel the sun. And so the little trees did. One summer, it was hot, very hot. Winter came, and it was cold, very cold. The snow never fell. Spring came, but the water did not, and all the trees were thirsty, very thirsty. One of the tall trees was sick, and the young trees could feel it in their roots. The tree that was sick said, "Sink your roots deep and drink the water. Send your branches high and feel the sun, and you will live." Then the sick tree told them something new. "I only taught you how to stay alive, which is not enough. There's more. See the birds in the sky, and feel the wind in your branches, and smell the flowers, and listen to the bees, and it will be beautiful." The wind blew, and the dirt crumbled, and the tree that was sick fell. Her roots tore at the dirt and ripped rocks from their place. The mountains groaned, the woods wailed. The tree left a big hole in the ground and in the woods. The little tree's roots felt broken, and it hurt a lot. But their roots ran deep, their branches reached high, and still they could see the birds, and feel the wind, and smell the flowers, and listen to the bees. There was still a hole, and it still hurt. And it was beautiful. All right, that was 4 minutes, so I'm gonna read something else. Okay. Shoot, I should have organized this better. Yeah, I'll just read this last one I was working on. So this is kind of like a glorified journal entry. Crunch, crunch, thunk, thunk, crunch, crunch. Wool socks smashed into a boot liner, smashed into a plastic boot, strapped with metal spikes called crampons, with which I kick rhythmically into the snow. Through all those layers, I can feel the hard crust break and my feet sink into the styrofoam-like snow up to my ankles. Sometimes the snow is more ice, and 2 kicks barely bury my toes. The rhythm of the thunk-thunk of my left and right hand holding my poles keep me in sync. As we ascend the mountain, sometimes I move like a slow-motion Nordic skier, pushing off my poles. Sometimes I crawl on all fours, punching the snow with my pseudo-ice axe called a whippet. We were all in the zone, but perhaps a little out of the normal. I was breaking trail while named Jesse spoke almost conversationally behind me. Crunch, crunch, thunk, thunk, crunch, crunch. The sky was a deep blue as it tends to wane at higher altitudes. We were heading towards Ruby Dome, which is the highest peak in the range. The snow, although aging, was a bright white and shone in the early summer with morning sun. The snow was perfectly contoured and yet to form pockets from the sun or grow algae. It was perfect weather for skiing corn snow. Crunch, crunch, thunk, thunk, crunch, crunch. The horizon danced and undulated in front of us, up and down, rising and falling at one side or the other. The horizon is never really where you think it is. After years of trying to move fast through the mountains, I don't try to guess when the horizon will stop dancing above my head and drop to my feet. Likewise, I know the ascent and anticipation are as rewarding as all the other parts of the dance. Crunch, crunch, thunk, thunk. Only when she finally reveals what's behind her do you see it. She'll open her arms wide as you reach a ridge, a saddle, or a peak like she's saying, "Nice work, I have this for you." Out of respect and at times fatigue, I'll stop and take it in. If I reply, it's usually with my silence. I've offered many a prayer in places like these. "Oh God, this is beautiful." Sometimes I expect to look over and see them standing there smiling at me, that I appreciate their handiwork. These panoramas will often take my breath away, and tears will mingle with the sweat on my face. Feelings of being 100% present leapfrog with the scarcity that I might never feel this way again, whether it be a minute or a month or decades from now, and the feeling makes my throat tighten. Then my breathing sounds, and I can hear my heartbeat pound in my ears. I can feel the crystals of snow crunching under my crampons, followed by the softer layer of mush still somewhere in the freeze-thaw cycle. I'm plagued by thoughts that my body will let me down sooner or later, so I remind myself to let the moment breathe and not hold on so tight. Crunch, crunch, thunk, thunk, crunch, crunch. I am alive, and right now I am well. Right now I am present.
That was awesome. If there's any other first timers out there, welcome. We hope you definitely come back. Our next three readers are Alan Boyd, Eva Meyer, and Corey Webster.
All right.
Folks, I'm going to do just a couple poems here. Mandatory. We sit indulging the demands of a lie someone else told, experiencing the loss of our human vibrancy, our only true birthright. Bored, we are lions pacing in this enclosure. Some administrator, somewhere else, ticks the box we're stuck in. Including me. If I pour this cup for you, I call it a gift. When the brew fills my mug, I am simply making coffee. Unaccustomed to seeing my name on both the to and from on the tag, I lose the generosity of self, the foundation on which all generosity rests, the vessel from which I pour. Ordinary worship. Not an angel or a devil, squarely on earth, human. Called to more than any preacher could envision, capable of more than any state would allow, more God than any deity. I bow longest and deepest to thee.
I'm Eva. Maybe I should have revised these a bit more, but I really like them, so I'm just gonna read them anyway. This first one is called, I Felt the Temptation to Steal a Kid's Lemonade Stand. Okay, it was called a sugar shack. I didn't quite know what that entailed, so I was intrigued. We live in the land of soda shops, so I guess it makes sense. I do not know how I would go about this task of thievery. I just imagined the parents coming outside to find that overtly decorated piece of wood gone, and I giggled. Obviously, I wouldn't do that though. It's too big and clunky. The second one is called Power Line. If I am made after God's image, then if I'm crucified, something gotta change. Maybe the official I like will get elected. Woo-wee, wouldn't that be something? For every tetanus nail, there will be a bill I like this passed. So I don't need anything fancier than a Midwestern power line, so string me up. And this last one is called, I've messed it all up in the most spectacular way. It is the night of the cats. I take myself into a new room to breathe. The cats follow me, circling after I take my spot on the ground. Finton, the wide-flamed preacher, moves quicker, making a complete revolution every 30 seconds or so. Jasper, with her ash-brown coat and pale blue eyes, is much more methodical, revolving around every 3 minutes. The room is more a workshop than a bedroom, which distracts me, albeit only for a second. It is time to do that stupid therapy exercise that never works. Count 4 things you can see, hear, touch, etc. Orange winged toy plane, white closet door, that beige wall paint in every house you've ever been in, Ryobi branded drill, wood plank that gives me a splinter, metal screw that helps me dig the splinter out, mesh, no not mesh, what's the name for that foamy floor? It smells like work and nothing else. The cats purr the whole time because they're both in heat. A similar heat is rising in the living room, a threesome without the third. How am I supposed to think of another thing I hear? Wait, why are these cats circling me? The purrs swell in chorus.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Corey Webster. I don't know what's going on with my heart. You know, it's just going 100 miles an hour for some reason. So I'm going to start off with something kind of light here. It's called Around the Willow Green. Around the willow green, we gathered in the shade. Had we been like farming men, we might have even prayed. We talked of grass and water cool, while tills were swatting flies. Perhaps we stood and chewed too long, and baked some nice green pies, Sometimes the heat we tolerate when summer breezes blow, when flies and heat irritate, to the shady willow go. In the shade of the big willow green, out in the pastures in between, we talked of grass and water and flies, and baked some nice green pies, We talked of Bessie's calf, the one she lost last spring, and how she's put on weight, oh, the poor old thing. We'd stand there in the summer heat, Big Willow was the place to meet, while our tills worked swatting flies, and baked some nice green pies, We'd compare the size of our calves while standing the willow round. Then Bossy would claim hers larger than mine, while some of us laid on the ground in the shade of the big willow tree, in the heat where cattle like to be. We'd argue the size as we swatted flies and baked some nice green pies, It's called Robin Sing. When you hear the robin sing so early in the in-between, the twilight and the black of night, you wake to know that all is right. The earth in motion held so still, while robin's voices their morning trill. Each new day begins with song, time forever spinning on. What first day did she sing? Was it Monday in the spring? The silent morning, her song awakes, and on that mark, winter breaks. So for a few years I was the bard of the Welsh Festival in Malad, and so I was asked to write a poem. They have a theme when we do things there in Malad, and this year was the dragon. So go figure. As you know, the dragon is important to the Welsh people, and I couldn't write a poem about a dragon. So this is the best I could do. And I wanted to read it here because I'm going to share it on Saturday there at the Welsh Festival. I first met the dragon on the plains of Wyoming, when the wheels of the wagon turned in the dust, with the big Rocky Mountains snow-capped in the distance. Across our hearts written, Deseret or bust. My legs were like iron, my feet turned to stone. The drag of the walk would cut to the bone. And the dragon raised up his wings in the fire as the wheels of the wagon rolled higher and higher. I knew in that moment on the western horizon, when the sun was on fire, the sky burning red, that I had met the dragon so many had talked of in the difficult hard times and the struggles we dread. And my legs were like iron, my feet turned to stone, and the drag of the walk had cut to the bone. The dragon raised up his wings from on high as wagon wheels turned and the days rolled by. I learned something out there, breathing dust by the hour. If the struggles are worthy and your hope doesn't sour, when the dragon raises up his head in the sky and his fire burns down your back by and by, and your legs get like iron, and your feet turn to stone, the drag of the walk has cut you to the bone. If you keep pushing forward, don't let your heart fail. That dragon will dissipate, and your hopes will prevail.
Okay. Our next three readers are Mike Oborn, Tim Keller, and Star.
I'm not a spring chicken anymore. Takes a minute or two to get going. I've never heard of a group like this before. I'm really kind of impressed and happy to be here. The most comments I've ever received for this piece are, I don't believe it. And I really haven't. It's called Sin City. Northern Utah, conservative to the teeth, had been my home for 28 years. Some latent awareness surfaced. Damn, I'd been holding my breath for months. I was vomiting nauseous with the stale air of radical fundamentalism. It was a grinding oppression. It may seem overly dramatic, but it's not. Abandonment is like being sick to your stomach all the time. I had begun thinking of the megacity Los Angeles, get as far away as possible. And am I too close to this thing?
You're just
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, a little closer.
I plan to lay over one night in Las Vegas. Check it out on the way. I've been to Vegas before, but I'd never driven there at night. From 100 miles out, you don't need a road map. The tremendous wattage generated for the casino signs that the Strip created, on the Strip created a dome of brightness over the desert that resembled one of those science fiction movies about a city under the sea. Hypnotic until you drive into the city itself and are overwhelmed at all the activity and the feeling of a never-ending day. Las Vegas is bordered on the east by a state of religion populated initially by polygamists, and on the west by Hollywood make-believe with the movies and Walt Disney sandwiched. In the middle, you have what else? Legal gambling and prostitution. That should have been sign enough. The first bright sunny morning in Vegas, I found one of those advertised $1 breakfasts. A small can't remember the name of a casino sandwiched in between the old Frontier and the old Stardust on the Strip offered artificially colored scrambled eggs, cardboard hash browns, and toast. Toast wasn't bad. Gambling was a novelty I'd never thought much about. Didn't take a wizard to know what the odds were. A small, lean, black drunk was playing blackjack and playing badly. The problem was he was winning. Didn't take long, maybe 30 minutes tops, but a small crowd had gathered, taking up roughly half the small casino. A raucous cheering roused me. Oh, thank you. Okay. A raucous cheering roused me from the cafeteria. I edged forward and found a pit boss so frustrated he changed his tie 3 times, red, yellow, red. I assumed it was to ward off the evil that was losing his casino's money. As for the drunk, his magic was in the free drinks. Listening to the noise of the crowd, I worked my way forward. The little black guy was making the most absurd bets. He would double down at precisely the wrong time, grin, and win. It was freaky. Almost every call was a logical one. He would draw when the dealer showed an up card of 8, and he would hold at 18. The next card was a deuce. It went that way consistently. It was insane. It was as though all the cosmic tumblers had strangely lined up in his favor, and the little drunk could do no wrong. He scooped the layoff into a growing heap of winnings at his chest, the green and black chips spreading out past his elbows, and he'd grin, push more chips into the layout for a bet and wait for the dealer to deal the cards. The crowd cheered him on to read the new bet. The dealer would have to reach out, stack the chips, call out the bet so the pit boss could, in growing frustration, nod. They always nod. It's how the casino gets their money back. The pit boss was growing more frustrated by the minute. For by now, even he was beginning to believe the little drunk carried a special karma. You could write down every move the drunk made and entitle it, "Never do this rule book." He'd stand on pat on 14 instead of draw when the dealer showed the queen. And sure enough, the dealer was holding 6 and had to draw. Bingo, another face card. The cheers from the crowd were explosive. The drinks were coming with the regularity you couldn't find in a VIP lounge. Ordinarily, a cup or free drink would be light lemon with too much ice, of course. And the drinks they were serving him were deep amber with one lonely ice cube. Finally, drink after drink, even the noise couldn't keep the little drunk's face out of, drunk's face out of the now respectable amount of green and black chips at his chest. Green chips, of course, $25, black, $100. His head would flop forward in a waning consciousness, and people in the crowd would nudge and shout. It was a losing battle. It seems the drunken gambler was employed next door at the Frontier Hotel where he had a job. I had just finished work as part of the graveyard housekeeping crew. The free booze was more good fortune than a drinking man could turn down. And new deck after new deck, the pit boss turning purple and out to get the casino's money back. A fellow employee at the Stardust had accompanied him to the little no-name casino for the same reason, to cash her paycheck before going home. She had called his wife. He cashed the check at the blackjack table. He's getting free drinks. She got the message. The taxi pulled up in front of the casino. Wife and daughter stepped out. The crowd parted and watched. Wife, accustomed to the bizarre behavior of drinking husband, registered the entire scene. The instant she walked through the door, keen, quick eyes took in the respectable amount of green and black chips her old man was using as a pillow, along with the shifty eyes of the pit boss and the crowd of protection around him. The daughter couldn't wake daddy, and the wife didn't care. Working fast, she never took her eyes off the pit boss. Turning to a couple of men, she sweetly asked if they would see her husband to the cab. All the while, she was scooping up chips and putting them in every pocket she had. Her purse full, she went to her daughter's pockets. Nor did she bother to take the chips to trade them in. Do that later. They were startup chips anyway. Small casinos often purchased and used chips from large casinos by mutual agreement. Against the crowd of protection, the pit boss was helpless. The murmur through the crowd guessed his winnings to be maybe 15 or 20,000. The true winner rode off with her husband, passed out on her daughter's shoulder. The crowd still cheering. Casino pit boss, probably taking half a week to recoup the casino's losses. Cab driver, visions of a large tip. The gambler, he would remember nothing but the demon hangover. Me, it wasn't about the money or beating someone else or the vicarious thrill of seeing someone get the better of a casino. It was about taking on a rigged system and winning. It was about holding power to account. It was because a crowd of compassionate strangers made sure the little guy, the underdog, drunk to the beat the odds and got out safe. I couldn't ask for a more righteous sign. I took a deep breath, let it out slow, hot down. I was home.
Could you
Fill that for me.
I have a car keys too. But mine's really super tame. Oh, wait, I forgot my glasses. Thanks for all the good readings tonight. What some fantastic pieces. Everybody. Red Camaro. Oh, by the way, I should tell you that I've been reading back through all of my old journals, and I'm up to 1998, and it's really edifying. You know, when you read things that you wrote a long time ago and you realize they're not half bad and you can make something of them. And so I made a little something of this. It was 4 times as long, so I just took out the neat part, which I'll read for you tonight. Red Camaro. Monday, September 1st, 1997. I've had this car 10 years to the day. Got it when I was 36, in the prime of my life. Red sport car with a big engine and a whole lot of history. Today, I'm selling it to my neighbor for his daughter's 16th birthday. The daughter, pretty smile, dark curly hair with bare feet and a wild reputation, came over for a test drive Friday night. Said when she came back after 15 minutes, my dad told me if I liked it, I could have it. He'll be back in town Monday and bring you a check. I really like it. So have I. I've really liked it. I've taken good care of it. I've driven it at high speeds, but I've been careful. I haven't taken crazy risks with it, knowing my limits. I've been driving, I had been, for 22 years when I bought it from an acquaintance whose parents ran a family business. My ex, who I was married to at the time, who had a couple of lucid months toward the end of our marriage, said, why don't we refinance the house and buy you a car? You choose the one. So I chose my choice. First time ever. I hurried before he changed his mind. Got the cash from the mortgage loan, signed the deal with the former owner, took the title, got my license plate, put it in my name only. My husband, still in a generous mood, stood by while I paid for our daughter's wedding and bought furniture for a newly finished basement. Used up all that money. He complained a little, but was chastened by his last few escapades against the doctrine of marriage. By the time his mood swung back to surly, I'd made my plan of escape. Kept the car and the furniture and found an apartment. Later, I gave the furniture to the married daughter who sold it when she ran into hard times. Now I'm selling the red car, my symbol of freedom. It feels like a bloodletting. I'm weak and shaky with anticipation, but I'm not worried. That wild young neighbor girl will drive it to school and boys will chase her and she'll get in trouble. But it will give her new freedom, that car. And maybe it will give her life new meaning. Yes, and this is the way I'll imagine it all. The men in her life will find they don't own her. Just like I did, she'll escape in that declaration of red Camaro, that symbol of wildness and freedom, that independent woman's car.
We have made it to our last 3 readers for June. I should be more professional, but I'm not. So, point of clarification, do we technically go to 8:30?
Well, we just go as long as we have people.
Okay,
read.
I'm just wondering if anybody wants me to do the thing where I say, does anybody else want to read and whatever? Okay.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, anybody else want to read?
Naomi, can you put me down?
Yeah, put Chad down.
It's Chad.
Okay, thank you for telling me, because I wouldn't have known.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else before
You can-
Chad?
You can put Woody down.
All right, Woody.
Woody.
You can also put Sean down.
Yay! Okay, now we're full. I love it. Okay, and somebody's cool pen up here. I'll leave it in case you want to get it back. All right, our no longer last 3 readers. So anyway, middle readers now are Jay Payne, Brock, and Shannon. And this is Jay Payne's last Helicon before he goes off into the world and does great things. So yay!
Hello everyone, I am Jay. I'll be sharing one poem that I recently wrote. It's called Stories Scrapped. I based it off of a lot of the stories that my grandmother has told me, and she says she wishes it could be a book, but I feel like the best I can do is kind of collage it and piece it together the way she's told the stories to me. Here is Stories Scrapped. Something about 1950s Japan. Wheel clack clatters, rail chatter present in the desired locomotion of the restless leg as she repeats the story. How the seaplane pilot appeared handsome in his Navy uniform. Lost at the station, something about wrong train and only one of them on it. Then a passenger passing of her father, only 60-something, makes sense really. He was there too, near it at least, and of course earlier. Veteran of the Pacific Theater, he tinkered with tanks, any machine really. After he sought, I don't know really what he sought, but somewhere between his post-bellum labor and California home stood a bar he never would have stopped at, except he'd sent his family west on a train, a mother and her children. From Massachusetts it departed, and oh how she hated bologna, pushed it like putty beneath her seat, the American dream, a motif in so many of her stories. That house out west, now a quintessential example of what a functional nuclear family ought to live in. It sold for over $1 million, but only long after her family had left. She shows me the real estate magazine, that house, that same house where her brother dared her to descend the laundry chute, where her mother found more for her to clean, where she and her sister baked cakes every day, waited for the father to return, waited as he slouched over a glass at that between place. But he never brought a bottle home, never. Yet its contents arrived, a burn in the belly to burn up whatever, whoever he might have seen burn up. She's always going on about returns, something about the right train and both of them on it. She ordered the American breakfast, a runny egg, some rice, 2 ribbons of limp bacon, and though repulsed, she did not cram the meat between the cracks in the seats.
fantasy college love life implodes. I could tell after we'd endured the third building of the freshman newbies campus tour that this girl with a huge mane of hair was as bored as I was and as ready to peel off and find some fun. Was that building called Dimwitty? I asked her as we lagged behind the intent group of fellow frosh. I thought it was Downwoody, she laughed, and we barely exchanged names when she said, let's cut out of here, and nodded towards White Plaza. She sat on the edge of the fountain, and over its splash said, lie down and put your head in my lap, it's a thing. And then she kissed me, more than once. I found out later it was a rite of passage for all cool Stanford students, nothing personal. But at the time I thought either she was magically and thank you Jesus smitten with me, or that this was the way all Stanford women acted. Get used to bliss. Agog with my good luck, I found my way to her dorm room after dinner, and before I knew it, I was filling another need, buying a guitar from her, a handmade Peruvian classical with an ultra-fat neck and sweet tone that she offered me for $40, saying she never played it. No more necking that night, but she asked if she could borrow my sleeping bag, so I saw her once more when I dropped it off in the morning. I knocked on her door that evening, but her roommate said she was camping out on the beach with her boyfriend. She invited me in, even asked if I wanted to make out, but as soon as my fantasy started re-emerging, she said, okay, enough, I've got homework to do. When I got back my super expensive 16th birthday present Eddie Bauer Caracorum extra down, extra long bag, gouts of down poked through black rimmed holes in the green ripstop nylon. They'd been too close to the fire, she admitted, both of them in my mummy bag, and you know, sparks fly. To make up for it, she gave me a few capsules that the boyfriend said were knockout psilocybin. The next weekend, as I watched the night colors to my own campfire at Big Sur, I thought about the two of them in my bag and wondered in whose fantasy I'd played a role.
I don't know how many poems I'm gonna read, so I'll just read some of them. This is one I just wrote and it's called The Hummingbird. The Hummingbird. Ebony needle beak pricking the middle of a metal flower to slurp a bit of sugar water. Gray and white and black tail twirling furious as she feeds. She is a tiny saw, sizzling, spitting dust. She winks away and then crashes back. Sassy, she flashes and smudges the air, spices the air with her whirring wings. She perches smoldering in the red leaves of a chokecherry tree. The sky a kaleidoscope of pink and blue clouds smearing. Scorched shimmer, she zooms back to the feeder, but just as suddenly arrows away. The air darkens, she leaves silence in the space. The sky is always blacker after the last white firework disintegrates. And these next poems I'm going to read are about two characters that I made up to help me deal with my brother Dylan's suicide. He committed suicide 11 years ago. But they're mostly about, I draw on my grandmother's house and my childhood. And so this one's called Thomas as Andromeda. Thomas's mother lugged him by the sullen arm to a seaside cliff, but where there would be no other choice but to chain him to jagged rocks. How dark it was and freezing. His lips turned blue, his skin burned where the metal tore into his tender wrists. He was snagged in night's black trap. Sticky, salty wind whipped snot into his black hair, plastered it to his face. And the worst part, betrayed by his own mother who left him alone, alone, alone. He knew she could hear him scream as she turned, her head cocked slightly, and she paused, uncertain. But then she moved on, leaving him alone and shivering in his thin blue pajamas for the night to swallow him down its cold throat. Thomas, exhausted from flailing, became very still, like a tooth or a knife, as he forced his face and his heart to turn to granite with its small specks, silver glitter. And this one's called The Doll. The doll. In the library, on a high shelf behind glass, was Grandma's porcelain Japanese doll. In her hand, she held a red egg with black slashed eyebrows and a frown. Why was the egg so angry, Stubbs wondered. Was it because he was condemned to be cradled forever in the doll's cold hands? Her face was sad and too pale and round, pink lips pursed and pensive. A few thin gray paint strokes graced the top of her head. What universe bloomed inside the doll's mind? Was her brain filled with glittering constellations? Was the air inside her hollow skull fragrant and mysterious, like Grandma's perfume? Stubbs' guts hurt when he thought about how she was only half a girl. The artist who crafted her molded only a torso. She did not have legs. Stubbs imagined they were beneath the glass case, growing like tree roots down. And this one's called Grandma's Laundry Sink. Grandma's laundry sink. When they were small, Grandma bathed Stubbs and Thomas in the porcelain laundry sink. They slopped pink washcloths across their chest and turned into mermaids, slapping their tails. Grandma massaged her expensive shampoo into their head, shaping the suds into iridescent crowns, making them royal inside the sink's pearly shell. And they spoke like they were very rich. Pardon me, can you pass the Grey Poupon? Once, after Grandma blotted them dry with towels, she touched one dot of her jasmine perfume behind each of their ears. Stubbs slipped outside to be alone, to lie on Grandma's white quilt on the soft grass in the shade and savor the fragrance, turning his head back and forth, eyes closed, inhaling. When he was bigger, Stubbs crammed himself into the laundry sink, closed his eyes and willed himself to grow a mermaid tail, shiny green and floppy and slick with scales. The tail he always believed would appear if he just waited long enough. The tail to propel himself through the ocean and away. The warm soothe of the blue silk water like Grandma's arms around him forever. And I'll just read one more. This is called Grandma's Kitchen. A knife block stood on the kitchen counter, a silver nameplate glued to it on which were etched his grandparents' names. Wilmer, Bud Perry, and Faye Perry, and their home address, 3640 Taylor Avenue. Stubbs knew this was evidence of how rich his grandparents were, and he painstakingly drew menus. Menu, 3640 Taylor Mansion. He did this in his twirliest handwriting, and he could only make scrambled eggs and toast, so he labeled them as mouth-watering and scrumptious, but he had to ask Grandma how to spell them. Beside the knife block was the silver bread box that perpetually held a loaf of Hollywood dark diet bread in orange plastic with yellow stars, because Grandma thought she was fat and was embarrassed. She was embarrassed too because she had to wear the same green dress to church every week because Grandpa refused to buy her another one. So she stopped going to church altogether. The box was underneath the cupboard that held the chipped blue mug. In the mug's mouth, a little black ceramic cat held its breath when the mug was filled with strawberry milk. Stubbs chugged it so the cat could breathe. Stubbs climbed on the teal stool to hoist himself on the counter. Grandma's pink towel cushioned his head for Grandma to wash his dark hair. The warm water washed over his head, through his hair, while Grandma massaged the no tears shampoo into his scalp gently. He breathed in the gold fragrance. He lay there still and obedient, like a mummy, arms over his chest, eyes closed, and he was calm, like royalty, almost gold-skinned in the sunlight filtering through the white curtains. Thank you.
Okay, so I will get to our last three readers, but in case you have to take off real fast, I'll do the announcement, which is our next Helicon West is July 25th in this room at 7, and it's all open mic, and so you're welcome to come and be a featured reader again. That'd be awesome. And there's another one in August, so think about that. Okay, our last three readers are Chad, Woody, and Sean, and thank you all for coming.
Hi. This is nice. No more janky. This is an older piece. I wasn't going to read tonight, but everybody's subscribed. It's about fishing. I apologize in advance. And it's called The Places We End Up At. Brad calls the motel around 8 p.m. to tell him we're on the interstate about 2 hours away, but will there be someone to check us in when we arrive? I should mention that my use of the word motel in this case is generous. We're heading to a cluster of frowsy cabins out back of an old roadside stopover. It doesn't matter whether it was originally a gas station, a gift shop, or a diner that became a convenience store, because it is now all of those things, and the one thing it is not is a motel. All-night check-in is just one of the many conveniences they do not boast. Air conditioning, ice, room service, or a few others, and we are surely closer to the continental divide than the nearest swimming pool or a hot tub. The proprietress of this establishment tells Brad the diner closes at 10 p.m. Her name is Brandy. She says if we get there before 10, someone can give us a key to our cabin. If we get there after 10, we can go around and back and find the key under or next to something somewhere. But that seems worrisomely complicated, so Paul drives a little faster. We exit the interstate and pull into the gravel parking lot with about 120 seconds to spare, but no more than that. Through the windows of the diner, we see Brandy closing up. Her attempt to flirt with Russ would be awkward. That's Russ back. Her attempt to flirt with Russ would be awkward even if she were much younger. However, she wins us over by treating us not so much as paying customers, but as distant and unexpected in-laws who are in need of a place to crash. So, she says, you're here. We admit that we are. She asks if we want to pay with cash or check, and in return we ask her if we can split our bill 4 ways so we can each pay separately. Well, she says, that makes it hard for me. No one says anything for a few moments.
So can you or can't you? Says Paul. Yeah, I can. As she runs our cards, we ask her how business has been. She sighs and says her best employee is out of commission because she had to run into town to bail her boyfriend out of jail. We nod and pretend to know how tough it is when your best employee has to run into town or bail her boyfriend out of jail. Brandy shows us to our cabin, the interior of which would not be unfamiliar to anyone who has been detained in an internment camp. Once we've dropped our bags and rod cases, we notice the cabin only has 3 beds. So Brandy takes us to the cabin next door, where she keeps a couple of rollaway cots that appear to have been in service since the Roosevelt administration, and I mean Teddy. She points out which is the better of the pair, and Russ helps me roll it down the boardwalk to our cabin. Brandy watches Russ as he pushes the rollaway. You're tall, she says. How tall are you? Once inside the room, I unfold the cot, and there in the center of the mattress is an evil-colored stain about the diameter of a good-sized dinner plate. Russ and I exchange a horrified glance, but Brandy is unfazed. I realize it falls to me to be embarrassed on behalf of all of us, so I quickly flip the mattress over. On the other side, the stain is even larger. Try again, says Russ. I turn the mattress back over and say, we're sure this is the best one? Yeah, says Brandy. The other one has mice living in it. These are the places we end up when we decide it's time for a fishing trip. The convenience store that sells car batteries, handmade costume jewelry, and expired Tylenol side by side on the same shelf. The filling station that makes the best fried chicken in the entire region but has a restroom so foul you only use it in case of great emergency. Greasy places, smelly places, but open places too. Brandy brings some bed linen. I use both my sheets to double wrap the mattress like a corpse. Outside in the parking lot, idling big rigs growl ceaselessly through the night. A sodium arc lamp on a high mast floods the cabin with ruddy electric moonlight. Clouds of big moths swarm in the glare, and occasionally they land on the window where they dance in circles and figure-8 patterns. Next morning we're up and at the stream before the sun gets there. We catch a few fish, but as the day advances there seems to be a discrepancy. I came on this trip for the superb fishing, and the fishing is not superb. They're in here, says Brad. He's hammering away at the deeper water with his nymphs. We just have to figure it out. I hate it when Brad says that because that's what Brad says when the fishing sucks. And as soon as you tell yourself it's not about the fish, that's exactly when you know the fish are what it's about. This is another place where we end up, somewhere where the fishing ought to be good, but it's not, and the river offers no explanation. As the day grows hot, the fishing worsens, though that seems hardly possible. Evening comes and it cools off. We return to the stream to split up to fish various sections that perform poorly in the heat of the day. As I approach the river and the spot where I want to start, I see animals moving in the high grass at the bank. It's a herd of 20 or more bighorn sheep. They emerge from the grass and pass within 50 feet of me before climbing a rocky hillside. It's juveniles and ewes with horns that don't curl all the way around. Their orderly but slightly nervous procession reminds me of a grade school class during a fire drill. 60 seconds later, they've climbed over the hill and out of sight. I walk to the spot and stand there in the laid over grass where the little herd have been resting and drinking. They've left behind a faint animal odor. As I survey the water for rising fish, there are none. It occurs to me that all around me is silence, and I mean silence. No breeze or birdsong. It stays this way for a long time. It's a rare and utterly welcome sensation, and it's where I wanted to end up all along. Thanks.
Just a second to get this guy. Okay, this one, nothing super special, just something I wrote last semester. It's about a cat that I loved a lot. He passed about a year ago. And I just felt like I needed to write something to kind of remember him for. Yeah. Amongst his fellow feral feline, Kumo was an oddball. He wasn't wary of anything. He welcomed new experiences. That's how we met. I had worked for a pest control company for about a year and a half. I came around the back of an old lady's house to see a garbage can lid filled with meow mix. The lid functioned as a feeding trough for Kumo and his impromptu family. As I came into view, the cats panicked, darting in different directions, disappearing into the woods. All that is but one. I walked closer. I expected him to fly away as well, but he simply looked up, uttered a tiny cry, and went back to eviscerating his food. Food was Kumo's whole life. He lived in a garbage can and his teeth were rotten. I suspect the rot came from eating things long gone foul. Fevered feasts on the fetid. The pain presented to him by the consumption of hard food was met with brutality and kind. He would shake each piece of kibble, imagining its intangible neck snapping and its will to fight back being crushed beneath his mighty paw. He loved being pet. Once he was finished eating, he would follow me around and rub up against my legs. This made spraying chemicals a bit more difficult, but I enjoyed the company. He quickly became the best part of my day. One day, he came around the side of the house to greet me, tiny claws piercing my pant leg and a wordless uppies. Naturally, I complied. He stood on my forearm, nuzzling my chest a few moments before he looked to the sky, cross-eyed and slack-jawed. I almost had time to laugh before he sneezed blood all over my chest. His harsh reality had gifted him a respiratory infection that would have been a death sentence if not treated. I called my wife and asked if I could bring him home with me, and he spent the rest of the day beneath the heater in my van. The now toothless Kumo stalked the halls of our home at all hours, hunting for potential prey. Nothing could sate his hunger. His new favorite foods were Sour Patch Kids, freshly unattended yogurt, and uncooked marinating steaks. He had even taught himself how to get inside a garbage can with a lid. We bought one specifically with a lock, and it made no difference. We keep the baking supplies on the shelf 5th from the ground. I have to reach above my head to pull them down. This distance meant nothing to my intrepid interloper. He must have pounced and scrabbled his way up from one shelf to the other until he reached them. When I arrived home, he was waiting for me at the door as usual. What was unusual is that he couldn't keep his balance. He swayed back and forth at times having to catch himself from falling over outright. It took me an hour to find the chocolate chips on the floor of the cupboard. He had eaten half the bag. He had lethally poisoned himself. We rushed to the closest emergency vet, an hour and a 20-minute drive. Decorum in these types of situations is to say, if you had waited one more minute, you might not have made it, and they didn't have time. He stayed with them for 4 days. Tending to him required keeping his body heat and heart rate at levels where his organs wouldn't fail. A constant effort from what I've been told. When he came home, he had 2 shaved spots, one on each arm, and the fur never grew back, but his love for danger did the next day. He was back in the garbage can in no time. Kumo had no need to learn lessons. The world was wrong, not him. 5 days after he got home, I returned from work to find the baking supplies scattered all over the kitchen. The little tyrant had returned to the same basket which had nearly killed him. Arrowroot powder and flour didn't appeal to him like chocolate chips, though. But he was no more ashamed of the mess. A tiny meow, much weaker than his norm, came from his minuscule maw. Then he rushed to greet me as always. His little claws cut into my leg, and all I could say was, "You're gonna be the death of me, buddy."
Hi, it's been a really good night at Helicon West. And I am going to read a short piece that's about grief, and it's about grief for our sweet Mitch. And here we go. The Instagram caption from the eclipse says, "It was an unexpected development, but I am in fact a happy camper." The post has the fewest likes and the pictures are blurry. Months earlier, you rested your head on the shoulder of the man with the pianist hands while the subway pulled out of Astoria, took you back to Queens, where you'd say your rushed goodbyes, and you wouldn't know if you'd see him again. You have to let him go the way you have to let go of your mentor's partner, her sweet Mitch, who dies the same night, only 4 hours after you say your goodbyes to the man with the pianist hands. Brian, his name is Brian. You sat with him on a couch a couple beers deep into New Year's and talked about marriage, how it's a capitalist construct that limits your ability to care for one another. You won't kiss him on New Year's, won't kiss him 6 months later. While you're riding the subway above ground, your head on his shoulder, the sun setting, both of you hurtling along the track. When he gets back to his place, he'll text you a video of his front stoop coated in blood, his downstairs neighbor's blood. He'll find out the next morning it was a murder. And you'll find out the next morning that your mentor's partner, who has become a friend in his own right, has passed on, died at the sight of his love, a one-night stand that continued for 30 years, that finally ended while you stayed awake, worrying about Brian, about Mitch, about your mentor, who would shortly be living in a world without her sweet Mitch. You hold on to Mitch, and on to Brian, and on to grief, vice-gripped and jealous. You don't know how to let go. You check your texts to see if Brian has reached out in order to distract yourself from fears about your own death, your own regrets about being in New York as Mitch died, your own shame that your grief stops you from being a real support to your mentor. Letting go is sitting at the celebration of life and standing in the cemetery, recognizing your grief is not yours alone, and your grief is yours to carry. It's a contradiction that makes sense when you stop asking other people to shoulder your grief and you learn to hold it yourself. Letting go is sitting in the dirt, your toes in the Logan River, rubbing the tears from your eyes while you think about all those river cliches. You can't step in the same river twice. The river washes things away, surrender like a leaf in a stream. And even though you roll your eyes at your own reliance on cliche, you'll be able to feel a little lighter when you stand up. You'll be able to put your phone away for an hour, then two, then for full evenings because Brian won't text you. And you'll stand under the desert sky in October, long after Brian stopped texting with a microdose laced breakfast burrito in your system. And you'll watch as the shadows of the juniper begin to swim, crescent-shaped, as the moon comes between you and the sun, and the temperature drops and the light dims. And you'll watch through cheap eclipse glasses as the moon slips into place, right in the center of the sun. And you'll think about a sunset on a subway ride while you rested your head for just a moment on Brian's shoulder. And you'll think about how Mitch should be here, and how in the microdose laced burrito you almost believe Mitch could be here. And you'll watch the moon slip away, the sun growing larger. Thank you.
I think that's it.
Yeah, that's it.
Thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks for reading. Come next time.
I like it.